listening to the Blue Raider Podcast, presented by Gold's Gym of Tennessee. Your all-access pass to everything Middle Tennessee sports, game recaps, player spotlights, and the latest from the heart of Blue Raider Nation. Now, here's your host, Jay Golden.
Welcome back into the Blue Raider Podcast, presented by Gold's Gym of Tennessee. It is a happy Victory Tuesday where the Blue Raiders were victorious in Reno over the Wolfpack in a last fourth quarter comeback. We'll be discussing all of that matchup as well as looking ahead to Week 4 homecoming against Marshall with Connor Smith of GoMiddle.com. But before we do that, let's thank our sponsor. Before we get into the episode, I need to thank our sponsor. Gold's Gym has been the mecca of fitness since 1965, and to celebrate their 60-year anniversary right now, you can get a month-to-month membership for just $19.65 bi-weekly. That's no commitment, full access to all 16 Gold's Gym Tennessee locations, and top-tier equipment to help you level up your fitness no matter your sport. But here's the deal. This offer is only available online, and it ends when the summer does, so don't wait. Go to goldsgym.com and lock it in today. Gold's Gym Tennessee. Train like a legend, no strings attached. Now, let's get back to the episode. Joining us now on the Blue Raider Podcast, presented by Gold's Gym of Tennessee, it is once again Connor Smith. Connor, happy Victory Tuesday to you.
Yeah, Jake, absolutely. Great game over the weekend. Good W for the Blue Raiders. I appreciate you having me on as always. It's a great time talking ball with you.
Well, it's been a short turnaround for yourself. I know you were here 2 weeks ago. Look kind of forward to this matchup. My opinions, much like yours, have probably changed a little bit about this team. There's still some skepticism in the air, but I guess the big takeaway this week is you won. And honestly, for 3 quarters of that football game, I thought, or really even 3.5 quarters of that football game, I thought this team wasn't going to win a football game all year. And they snatched a victory from the jaws of defeat, which are the words that Jeff Choate used, Nevada's head football coach, how kind of flabbergasted how they were able to lose that game. And really, it feels the same way on our side. I don't know how we did it. I just grit. Maybe that's the right word. I know that the word they use a lot this offseason was hunger. Connor, how do you break down what in the world happened there in Reno?
You know, I think the defense played really well. Nevada went up 13-0 early because they had a different quarterback than what Middle Tennessee was expecting. They were scouting for Chuba Purdy. They ended up using 2 different quarterbacks, one mainly just to pass, and he kind of caught them off guard for a second. But once they adjusted, smooth sailing, didn't give up a single point the rest of the game. Offensively, it took a while to get clicking. Finally, those 2 drives when Vadiato and company drove down the field, scored a pair of touchdowns, both on the last drive. One was Vadiato's game-winning score. So I think it's a lot of inconsistency from the guys, so to speak. I mean, that's been kind of the thing all year long. But this time they were able to come out on top.
I've, again, been conflicted with this week. I want to be excited and happy that they won and still be excited because they have another winnable matchup at home this week with Marshall, a rebuilding program themselves going through their own coaching change. One of the coaches that we talked about this year is new coaches. You should have an edge on these guys. I don't know that they have that edge, and we'll get more into that Marshall game. But you talked about the lack of consistency there. One thing is for sure, the defense looks great. They still give up that occasional big play that puts them into bad situations. And then the offense, I mean, even if you're taking the whole fourth quarter as a whole, outside of that, they have a 9-play drive that ended in a punt. They have a 10-play drive that ended in a touchdown and an 11-play drive that ended in a touchdown. At some point, like, something clicked. And I don't know that they solved their issues, but it does feel like we have some level of momentum finally.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you hope for at least. I'm not completely sold on it because, I mean, we've seen through the first 3 games, they have those drives where they go 9 plays and, like you said, punt. You look at the opening drive where they went all the way down, I believe, 10 plays or something like that, and then took 2 sacks, have to kick a field goal. And then you've seen them go 3 plays, 7 plays. So a whole lot of inconsistency. I think really the big issue is just finishing the drives. Hopefully they'll figure that out. But, I mean, for me, that's still a huge question mark. Yeah,
and the opening drive, just where the the script runs out. We saw that in the second half against Wisconsin. That first drive of the second half, they get all the way down there, and then they just have to settle, turnover on downs. And like you just touched on with Nevada. So the script seems to be excellent out of the locker room, but for whatever reason, it just blows out of steam. They're not able to find any continuity. But this week's going to be another really tough one. As much as I want to look back, there's good and there's bad, but I'm just ready to move on to this week 4 homecoming matchup. And it's another one that we circle on the preseason. Like, this is a game you've got to win if you want to find yourself in that 6-win conversation, because Marshall is again rebuilding, as I previously stated. So as we look ahead to this matchup, this one scares me for 2 reasons. One, this defensive front is even better than Nevada. That's something that we had previewed last week, is that Nevada's front front 7 is good, and we saw signs of that, but Marshall's is even better. And then secondly, the other concern is Marshall looked very good last week against Eastern Kentucky. Prior to that, they had a narrow loss against Missouri State, and then they lost on the road at Georgia, as everyone will this season. But the thing is those 2 scores, all 3 of those games, really, for that matter, are necessarily predictable scores. You know you're going to get blown out at Georgia. You should be blowing out Eastern Kentucky. But the Missouri State one is where I scratch my head, because Missouri State was supposed to be the bottom of the barrel this year in Conference USA terms, and they lost in that game at home. So I question myself, how good is Marshall because of that outlier Missouri State game? I don't know yet, and it's still so young in the year, but I can't necessarily find the pieces to say, is Marshall good or is Marshall bad, or is maybe Missouri State better than was advertised?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think Missouri State was a really good FCS program that's kind of been better than people expected this year. With Marshall, I mean, they played 3 different quarterbacks. They blew out Eastern Kentucky last week with Carlos Del Rio Wilson, who has looked the best out of all 3 quarterbacks. So I think that kind of plays a role into it. All I know is that, like you said, Marshall, this is a very, very winnable game for MTSU. But there's 2 big things that you look at that they have clear advantages over us when it comes to the front 7. Like that, like you said, scary. 11 sacks the last 2 games, and that they hit chunk plays. So that's 2 things that, stand out to me. But like overall, yeah, definitely a winnable game.
Well, you touched on it. Again, I'll expand a little bit more. The defense is one of the best that Sunbelt has to offer. And again, I don't know how much of that is skewed by the numbers of playing Missouri State. Again, an offense that isn't particularly flashy. Now, Jacob Clark, the quarterback at Missouri State, has been, I think, one of the best. He might even be top 3 in passing yards in Conference USA. But their offensive line is not one to be celebrated at Missouri State. So I don't know how much of those numbers are affected. And the same with Eastern Kentucky. I don't follow the Colonels, but historically they haven't been a great football program. And so the numbers, you look at Georgia, again, that's not a good comparison either, because they have no sacks and 3 TFLs against Georgia. So somewhere MTSU is going to fall in this spectrum. Obviously, they're going to be closer to the Missouri State and Eastern Kentuckys of the world than Georgia. But my fear, once again, is, can this football team score points against another stout defense? And maybe our opinion is skewed because they have played good defenses. Austin Peay, now in the top 20 of FCS. You already know how good or how bad Nevada's offense was, but how good that defensive front was. Just scored 14 points there. So in Wisconsin, one of the better defenses in Big Ten, probably the best defense they're going to face all year. You scored 10 points there, but you looked good in moments. So all that to consider. I still don't know if it's the offense is bad or the defenses that we're playing are good, but this is going to be another test for them this week. And hopefully, this is going to be a great builder to what we are going to face in Conference USA, because I don't think Conference USA is equipped with the best defenses we're going to see all season long. So maybe this is just a bit of recency bias on my part and not believing in this offense, but I have no real reason to believe this offense right now, because the points on the board, still the worst in the country right now. I don't think it's going to get any better this week. That's my fear. So I think we're going to have to lean heavily on our defense to even give us an opportunity. Like you touched on, this 3 quarterback system. They don't have a projected starter as we're recording this right now, but they do seem to run the ball somewhat well. It's kind of a running back by committee as well. That's the only thing, is the only chance I think we have is we have to keep them at 0.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right with that. I mean, offense has not been great to start the year. Obviously, the pieces are there with Najee Cox, Jaquel Middlebrook, Nick Vadiato. It's just they haven't put it all together yet. And, I mean, after the first three games, especially after the Nevada week where I thought they would put up 20, 30 points and they didn't. They've got to prove it. So I'm with you. They've got to prove it offensively. If the Blue Raider defense can hold Marshall at under 10, and they've got a good shot. But as you touched on, they've got a couple good running backs. Their quarterbacks, you have no idea, what they're capable of, just because they've played 3 different ones, but they are mobile quarterbacks, and that's given Middle Tennessee trouble this year. So it'll definitely be interesting.
One thing has been certain, this game included, and the previous two, we have grown accustomed to facing bad offenses and facing really good defenses. And so we'll see what kind of that grows into this year. But I'll pose a question before we get into our keys to the game. Do you think, one, this offensive line is better than last year? And secondly, does that mean that they are good?
I think it's pretty obvious they are better than last year. You look at, especially from the tackle perspective, Joseph Habanowski and Zach Clayton, they both play that right tackle role and both have been solid. Jacob Ott's big addition, been much better than last year. So I think, yeah, it's much improved, but is it good? I don't know. You've seen spurts of good play. You've seen spurts of, where they can't protect Nick Badiotto. So it's still in that realm of inconsistency, much like most parts of the team. But talent's there, and it could be something that, down the road in the season, they finally put it all together and show the unit that they could be.
Yeah, that's my concern. I think they definitely are better on paper, but once again, it's just a bunch of like you said, inconsistency. I don't know that they are better. Like that's just my biggest concern overall is it's yet to see. And again, how much of that is facing these good defenses, because our sack numbers are relatively high as well. So I don't know how much stock to hold into it right now, but let's go ahead and roll into our keys to the game this week, sponsored by Trevor Haggard Insurance. And when life happens, you want someone in your corner who actually knows your name. And that's where Trevor Haggard State Farm comes in, whether it's protecting your car, your home, or your family's future. Trevor and his team are right here in Murfreesboro, ready to help. So don't just settle for some 1-800 number. Call a neighbor who cares. Call Trevor Haggard State Farm today and let them help you protect what matters most. Trevor Haggard State Farm, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And Connor, we'll kick it off with you first. The keys to the game. We've already alluded to it a lot, but let's kind of dive in deeply here.
Yeah, my first one is protect Nick Badiotto. As we said earlier, that Marshall front seven is nasty. 11 sacks, 25 TFLs this year. Really good unit that has thrived over the last 2 games, but all 11 sacks have come against Missouri State and Eastern Kentucky. So I think that's a big thing. Plus, as we talked about, the offensive line at times has had trouble protecting Badiotto. So this is a game where, things could get out of hand quickly if the offensive line can't protect their quarterback. So that's my number one thing. And then number 2, no big plays on defense. Explosive plays have burned MTSU all year long. And even last week against an offense like Nevada, they gave up 10 explosive plays, 6 in the run game, 4 through the air. Especially with Marshall's receivers, not very good. Their quarterbacks, I don't think they have a quarterback. They have 3, but the saying is if you have 2 or 3 quarterbacks, you have none. I think that's the big thing is don't allow explosive plays from an inferior offense and protect Badiotto.
That's kind of been the revolving door, and the theme around here is that right there in and of itself is particularly the protect Badiotto. That's kind of one that I had picked out for the last 2 weeks, and in a way, that's one of my first one. My most important one is to run the football, and I know again that's a recurring theme that I keep talking about here on the show, but things tend to do well when the football is being moved on the ground. And I say that because the first scoring drive, you open that drive up with 11 yards on the ground. You get a 9-yard rush from Middlebrook, a 9-yard rush from Badiotto, then you quickly get a rush from Middlebrook. There is obviously some ability there that has opened up the passing game, because there at the end of the game, you're able to throw the ball at will. So I could see both sides of this argument that your scoring drives are when you pass the football, but even that final touchdown, you're able to get Badiotto out in space because Nevada's only rushing 3 or 4, and that allows him to make plays with his feet. I don't know the perfect formula, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm a smart offensive-minded guy here, but all I know is when I talked to Bodie Reed at the beginning of the year, I talked to Derek Mason at the beginning of the year, they say they want to run the football. We haven't seen it. If you want to run the football effectively, I don't know if it's if you need a horizontal passing game, if you need to run more power, more outside zone, whatever it is, you got to be able to get your playmakers the ball. Jaquil is a playmaker, and he's still averaging 4 yards per carry. And even Ricky Hunt Jr. is averaging over 4 yards per carry. They're not carrying the ball a lot. I think collectively they have somewhere in the 45, 50 carries collectively as a piece. That's not including their receptions. I think Jaquil's one of the top receiving targets on this team this year. But I want to see the ball in their hands more. When you're able to run and establish the ground game, it's going to make passing a lot easier. Obviously, the drop passes are still an issue of concern this year so far, but it opens up the passing game. It's going to give some level of relief, if you will, to Vadiato and the effect that he has to have on the game, because we saw a guy that shouldered a lot of pressure in that fourth quarter, and he carried that pressure to a win. And that's one of the gutsier performances I've ever seen from an MTSU quarterback, and no better guy to carry that pressure. But you got to make life easier for Nick, and that includes giving the ball to Jaquil, giving the ball to Ricky, and making life easier for them. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not going to pretend to know the answer to that, but I have to imagine running the football makes that easier. And my second one is win the trenches. We've talked about the offensive line a lot already today. Mine is the defensive side. We talk about how good Marshall's front seven is. MTSU's front seven is good, maybe not as good, and this is their opportunity to prove how good they are. You're going to face another bad offense this week. I would say on the same level of Nevada. They don't know their quarterback. A lot of it comes from their inconsistency in the passing game. So they don't have anyone that can necessarily throw the ball particularly well. They have a mobile quarterback, as you touched on. Prove that you are a good front seven by making another bad offense look bad. Again, if you hold them to 0, you can't lose this football game. I think winning the trenches on the defensive side is huge, but also winning on the offensive side, keeping Vadiato upright to kind of parlay what you're already saying, parlay what I'm saying about running the football. If you can win the trenches, you're going to win. That's kind of a blanket statement. You can say that every single week. If you win the trenches, you're going to win the football game. But I think this week is very paramount. Prove that your front seven is as good as it has been, and then show some signs of life on the offensive side. So enough of that. The keys to the game this week. I want to get into the X factor. Connor, we'll start with you first. Who is the X factor that's going to make this pivotal for MTSU this week?
Yeah, for me, it's Najee Cox. He's a bigger guy, 6'4", has true track speed because he did run track at Fresno State Community College. And he's going up against a secondary that, aside from former Blue Raider Marvin Myers, they're all 5'11", 6 foot, 170, 175, barely hit 180. They're smaller defensive backs. And when you have a bigger, strong, fast receiver like Najee, and even A.J. Jones or Amorian Walker, but Najee's the big one. I mean, you've got to get him involved and take advantage of that smaller secondary. If you can do that, you'll be in a good spot.
Yeah, he's showing glimpses of another star receiver for Derek Mason. Again, I've been very impressed with Najee in particular. He just every week in, week out, he's that big piece. And you're right. I think the big play opportunity has got to be there going up against this Thundering Herd secondary. Mine, X factor, I couldn't find one person in particular, but it's got to be the offensive line. I've already talked about it enough. I'm not going to keep hammering this over and over for you listening. I'm sure you're already tired of it, but offensive line, if you're able to control the trenches on the offensive side, allow this team to run the ball, allow Vadiato to find Najee Cox in time and space. I just don't see a way you lose this game if you do that. That's the big if. You have to do those things to win this game. But let's move on. We're going to get into this prediction portion of the episode. We're going to talk about what we expect to happen. The Vegas line opened up at 2.5. Again, I was surprised at how low that was. I guess we're getting a little bit of respect for covering a 9.5 money line at Nevada. Marshall has their question marks. Marshall probably even gets a few extra points because of how well they handled Eastern Kentucky, when many thought that might be a little bit closer than it was. I think Vegas is guessing. That's probably why it's at 2.5. They're just giving the benefit of the doubt to Marshall because of they beat an FCS opponent and MTSU didn't. That's probably the only thing I can think of. Once again, I am foaming at the mouth at the over-under. At Nevada, it was 48.5. I said take the under. This week, it's 47.5. Again, take the under. These are two horrendous offenses, two defenses that have been pretty good this year. But Connor, score prediction, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Hammer the under 100%. I'm with you on that. If I was a betting man, I would do that. I've got to go Marshall 20-14. I don't think their offense is very good at all, but that they'll probably hit a couple plays or get some returns. I've just got a feeling they'll score close to 20. And then, I mean, the offense for Middle Tennessee, I mean, it's got a lot of potential, but you've got to show me. And until you show me, I'm going to pick you to score 14 points or less. So give me the Herd 20-14.
I mean, averaging 12 points a game at this point. You've scored no more than 14 in a game. I don't blame you until I see this offense score over the 20s. I wouldn't anticipate them scoring 20 until that happens. And this probably isn't the week it's going to happen. Again, this is, besides Wisconsin, maybe the best defensive front you're going to face this year. And if you can't run, you're not going to be able to do it. So I agree. It's going to be a low scoring affair. I'm more in that ballpark of like 17-10 Marshall. I know I've gone all in on being pessimistic. I'm going to continue that trend until I see some promising signs on offense. I'm just going to assume it's pedestrian and the defense has to win the game. Defense has probably got to get a touchdown at some point to make it to keep you in this ball game. It's frustrating because we have all the star players that you could possibly need. Najee Cox is going to be a P4 transfer. Let's call it what it is. Shaquille Middlebrook, if he had enough tape, he'd be a P4 transfer. The offensive line is the question mark. I'm sorry, I'm going back to it, but Vadiato, great quarterback in Conference USA. So it's frustrating. You got all these weapons. You're not putting the points on the board to make you feel like you've got a good offense. Cause I think that they have the potential to be the best, or I say top half. I don't want to say the best. I think Western Kentucky has got that feather in their cap this year as the best offense. La Tech looked great this week. I'll give them some credit there, but I think New Mexico State is bad. But anyways, MTSU, good skill players, just not executing well. I don't know what the solution is, but hopefully you can find some remnants of 20 points this week. That'd be great. I think I'd be really excited about that heading to Kennesaw in week 5. But Connor, once again, thank you for taking the time to join us. I know I did a lot of monologuing this week because of I'm just not happy still until I see some satisfaction. But Connor, you guys are rolling out a ton. I know yesterday you guys released a post press conference, the Monday press conference that Derek Mason does, you and Shane. You guys talk over everything you learn. So I don't want to take anything away and obviously give some meat on the bone for the listener to go and check that kind of stuff out. But what are kind of some other stuff this week that you're going to be releasing ahead of kickoff on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it relies on the press conference and what Coach Mason gave us answers for. So definitely we'll be doing preview stuff, talk about, Marshall's front seven, some injury updates if we get them. There's still TBD on a lot of guys, but overall just a lot of mix of what we've been doing.
So Connor and Shane they do a lot of the exclusive stuff over at Go Middle. So of course there is a paid subscription side to get some more of that in-depth analysis that they are providing. So make sure you head over there and do that. And of course there is some free stuff. I know we do the pick. Y'all do the pick'ems every single week. You can kind of get some more insight closer to kickoff. But Connor, great stuff from you as always. I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
I appreciate it, Jake. You're the man. I love coming on, so I appreciate you having me.
Thanks again to Connor for joining us. And of course, much like our last home game where Shane was on, Connor will be joining us post-press conference after the game on Saturday. So look forward to that. We'll kind of be recapping everything we talked about in today's episode. Don't miss our Friday release this week before kickoff. We'll be joined by Thundercast, a podcast hosted there at Marshall University. They'll give us all the insight on what's happening for the Thundering Herd. Of course, I will be joining their podcast sometime this week. So stay locked in on all of our social media at Blue Raider Pod. That's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and of course on YouTube, so you don't miss those announcements for when all these releases are happening. Again, at Blue Raider Pod. I appreciate you for listening to today. Thanks again to Trevor Haggard and Gold Gym of Tennessee for sponsoring. And until next time, go Blue.